So Jurassic World Dominion was directed by Colin Trevorrow and it stars Chris Pratt, Bryce Dallas Howard, Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, and it is the third and final installment in the Jurassic World franchise, as well as the final chapter in the whole Jurassic Park franchise as a whole, apparently. And in this movie, following the events of Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, dinosaurs now roam the Earth. And basically, humans have to find a way to basically coexist with them now that they're basically all over the world. At least that's what the trailers tell you what the movie is about. The movie itself is actually very different than what the trailer tells you what the movie's about. I won't go into spoilers here, but basically, it's not what you think. It's really not what you think. So this is a movie that I had mixed feelings about going into it because I am not a fan of the Jurassic Park franchise. I do love the original movie. The other ones I haven't really enjoyed because they've never matched to the level of the original Jurassic Park. And even though some of them can have like enjoyable moments in them, I just didn't really care about any of them. Like once I kind of rewatched them all to kind of prepare for this movie. And once I kind of like figured like I shouldn't just watch them thinking that they're going to be as good as the original Jurassic Park, I kind of enjoyed them a little bit more. And I was not looking forward to this movie because, again, I wasn't a big fan of the franchise. I didn't know where they were going to go. I kind of thought they were just going to screw it up again. Even though they were bringing back the original cast, I was still skeptical. The trailers looked alright for the most part, but I was just not as excited for this movie. And the weird thing about this movie was that my reaction to it is that at first, like while watching it and kind of like walking out of it at first, I honestly didn't hate it. I thought it was enjoyable for what it was. And I kind of thought, oh, that wasn't as bad as I heard it was going to be. This movie was honestly kind of entertaining. It was fun, and I kind of let things go in it. And then the more I thought of it, the more I hated it. Yeah, I think this is the worst Jurassic Park movie by a long shot. And, oh my god, it's not even a competition. It's not good. Like, not good at all. So, is there anything in this movie that works? Honestly, the only thing in this movie that really, really works is the fact that, you know, the original trilogy is back. Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, you know, Dr. Alan Grant, Dr. Ellie Stadler, Dr. Ian Malcolm, all back. And they're in the movie quite a bit, surprisingly. I'm actually really glad by their screen time in this movie. They do a lot of things in this movie that I'm actually really glad that, they were in this movie, because they saved this movie. Their chemistry is still there, the same as it was 30 years ago. And I'm just really glad that the movie doesn't like focus on them entirely. It does focus on, you know, the other characters, I guess. But I'm just really glad that I got to see the original trio again. Also, Bryce Dallas Howard is not terrible in this movie. I've often criticized Bryce Dallas Howard. I haven't really been a fan of her as an actress. But in this movie, she actually is better than she has been in the other two Jurassic World movies, so I'll give her that. The acting overall is tolerable for the most part. Like, again, love seeing the original trio. Bryce Dallas Howard is good. The actress who plays Maisie, she's okay. B.D. Wong, they're okay. And some of the dinosaurs look impressive enough, but at this point, I just feel like a lot of people did in Jurassic World, apparently, and that dinosaurs are just not that interesting anymore. The second act of this movie, I will say, is probably the most entertaining part of this movie, because it actually has a lot of thrills. There's some dino action, and there's a lot that goes on in the second act that I kind of like let a lot of things go from the first act. So, what's terrible about this movie? Pretty much everything else about this movie is bad. Like, almost everything else about it is terrible. Again, first off, the trailers are incredibly misleading. They don't really tell you what the plot of the movie is. And when I saw what the actual plot of the movie is, I was at first stunned, but the more I thought of it, I kind of thought, you know, this would be a really interesting movie. But the fact is, I feel like, here's what I think happened. Like, they had the script for a movie involving this whole entire premise, and then they couldn't sell it, and then they were like, okay, what if we make it a Jurassic World sequel, because we have no idea what to do after Fallen Kingdom. And that's how it got greenlit. I feel like this could be a really interesting premise for a movie. Just the fact that it's part of this universe, and the fact that it's just not as interesting because it's in this universe. It's honestly upsetting. And again, what helps reiterate my theory about this is because there's not even a lot of dinosaurs in this movie. There's a lack of dinosaurs in a Jurassic Park movie. Like, how do you screw that up? How? There's some dino action here and there, but there's just not a whole lot of dino action in this movie. Also, Chris Pratt in this movie, I've liked him as an actor, and here in this movie, it's basically the opposite of Bryce Dallas Howard. I thought she got better with each movie. He gets worse with each new movie. I don't know what it is. It's just weird. I don't like him in this movie anymore. I thought he's not terrible. He's just not likable anymore in this movie. I thought his character was just horrible, obnoxious. Horrible's a strong word, I just didn't like his character in this movie. A lot of the villains in this movie are incredibly boring. You have this villain who looks like Tim Cook from Apple, and he's just boring. You have this villain who only appears in one scene in the second act, and she's never mentioned again. Why? Just why? Also, the pacing of this movie is terrible. This movie's almost 2.5 hours long, and it feels like an eternity at times. Mainly because the first act is all set up, and it's just exposition as well. And the third act of this movie, it just drags on and on and on. It's just so boring at this point. Again, the second act of this movie is the only act in this movie that I thought was actually fun. The other two, not so much. And there's also way too many characters in this movie. A lot of them I kind of just did not care for. Again, original trio, fine. Bryce Dallas Howard, okay. But there were so many characters who I felt like didn't really have that much to do with their characters. DeWanda Wise, I thought she was good for her brief performance, but not a whole lot was known about her. Also, Jeff Goldblum has an assistant in this movie who helps him in the movie, especially in the last act. He doesn't really have much of a personality, unfortunately. I assume he's a really good guy, but I just felt like his character was also very underwritten as well. Again, the movie is way too long. There's a lot of really clunky exposition, especially at the beginning, and it's just so boring at this point. And there's so many ridiculous moments in this movie. Like, there's this scene where Chris Pratt and DeWanda Wise are walking on ice, and they're kind of like moving carefully so they don't get caught by dinosaurs, and also so they don't slip on the ice. And then when they're seen by a dinosaur, they just start running on the ice, and I'm like, really? Really? Man, like, it's amazing that you're not slipping on that ice right now. Also, there's another ridiculous reveal. Remember the ridiculous reveal from the last Jurassic World movie, Fallen Kingdom, about the child? There's an even more ridiculous reveal in this movie. It's kind of like what they did with the Disney Star Wars movies. The reveal about Rey in The Last Jedi, it was hated by pretty much everyone. And then they had a reveal in Rise of Skywalker that basically retconned it. And they hated it more. It's basically the same thing here. It's somehow even less plausible. And I'm like, why? How? That may be the most ridiculous thing about this movie. That may be the most unrealistic thing in this movie. In a movie where humans and dinosaurs live in the same world. This movie is bad. This movie is so bad. It's fine while you're watching it. But if you just turn your brain on, it's horrible. I'm done with this franchise. I am just done. I'm trying not to be like really negative in this review because, again, while watching it, it can be entertaining. But once you really start thinking about it, it's bad. It's just bad. Everything about it makes no sense. The plot is the plot is interesting, but it doesn't belong in a Jurassic Park movie. I can't really say I'm let down by this, but I'm just like at a loss of words. So even though it's great to see the original trio again, even though some performances are fine and some of the visuals are really good, and the score is always good in the Jurassic Park movie, and again, the second act is probably the most fun I had with this movie. Pretty much everything else about this movie is terrible. The first act is boring, it's exposition filled. The third act is just slow and just not interesting to me. The dinosaurs are barely in this movie. The villains are not interesting. The pacing's terrible. It's way too long. There's so many characters to care about that I just didn't care about. And so many reveals in this movie that just make zero sense, that I was just stunned at times. Like, I was stunned. Like, you know how people were shocked by how good those visuals were in the original Jurassic Park? I'm not going to be surprised if people are shocked by how ridiculous the reveals are in this movie. It's... yikes. So, I'm not going to say skip it because, again, it may be entertaining if you turn your brain off. I'll give it 1.5 out of 4 stars. Stream it. Just, if you're a fan of all these movies regardless, you will probably enjoy this movie. If you're like me, you like the original Jurassic Park, but have problems with all the other ones, then you're probably going to hate this as much as I did. So, what did you think of Jurassic World Dominion? What is your favorite Jurassic Park movie? Comment down below. Subscribe to the channel. This is Pat. Stay safe.